We'll talk to Rece Davis down in Houston, brought to you by our friends at MyBookie.
Yeah, don't forget, game tonight right there at MyBookie.ag. Code next round when you sign up to get that sign-on bonus up to $2,000. Don't forget, code next round, MyBookie.ag. Welcome in. Rece, how are you in Houston?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Doing awesome. Thanks a lot. We were just discussing this in the first hour. I don't know that it'll get remembered this way, but in the event UConn can close this out, this is one of the most dominant runs we've ever seen in an NCAA tournament.
It is. I mean, they were a basket away Saturday night from becoming the first team with 5 victories in an NCAA tournament by at least 15 points. Now, there's probably a caveat that should be offered, until the tournament expanded in 1985. You didn't play that many games, so I'd have to go back and look to see if UCLA probably did, won all of its games some years by 15 or more. But it is a ridiculous accomplishment up to this point and one more step to take. But they have been clearly the best team in the tournament. And I would argue not that they were seeded improperly, because that 6 of 8 stretch and then losing in the semifinals, I believe, of the Big East tournament probably merited their seed based on their paper resume of where they were. But there's not much question that in terms of talent, depth, ability, big time wins, that this was a 1 or 2 seed type team in terms of talent.
Rece, can you ever remember a bookend season like this? They started 14-0. They completely dominated teams like Alabama. You mentioned the 6 of 8 that they lost in the middle of the season, and they're 16-0 in non-conference play, and they are completely dominating this tournament. I can't remember a team that took a dip like that in the middle of the season and then was so dominant at the end.
It is a little unusual, I think. I'd have to, look back and think. Nothing jumps to mind. I mean, almost every team hits some type of slide. It's such a long season, but that was a little bit of an unusual stretch for them. And I know Dan Hurley's talked about that they're a little bit different and in terms of how they play, and sometimes teams seeing them for the first time, it's a little bit different for them as opposed to conference teams who know them a little bit better. So, maybe there's part of that, but I think it was more of just one of those things. They played some good teams. The Big East is good. They didn't really play their best for a while, and they were able to put it together late in the season, because with the exception of that, and so they didn't win the Big East tournament, but with the exception of that slide that we talked about, man, they've been really good. So whatever 8 games is, 2-3 weeks, with the exception of, say 3 weeks in the middle of the season, they've been as good as anybody.
I've got a protein bar that I'm finishing up right here. I can't make it 90 minutes without putting something into my body. What Sonogo is doing with the fasting for religious reasons between sunrise to sundown in his performance, it's just a interesting storyline that he's able to do what he's doing. You're around a lot of athletes. You're an athlete. Your son's an athlete. When you talk about fasting like this and performing on this stage and having the support group, having oranges ready to go and peanut butter or whatever at halftime, how big of a storyline has this been in conversations you guys have been having through this tournament?
We brought it up on Saturday, Jim, and it is something that I think is, you can be overlooked and think, oh, well, once sundown comes, he and his teammates who are observing Ramadan are allowed to eat. It's not that simple, in terms of getting the energy. I thought it was really maybe a little bit of insight to it. LaFonso Ellis played with Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, the former Chris Jackson from LSU, when they were with the Nuggets. And Mahmoud told LaFonso, according to what he said on the show Saturday, that usually after 2 or 3 days, that his body adjusted and he was able to function pretty well. But Adama did mention that he got a little fatigued at the end of the Gonzaga game. But they had the late semifinal, I think, which they believed would help him in terms of energy. And then tonight, with tip-off being 8 o'clock local, 9 o'clock Eastern time, or a little after that, I think they're hopeful that will help him have the energy he needs for this national championship game, too.
Rece Davis is with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. He's joined us throughout the tournament, courtesy of MyBookie.ag. Code next round when you sign up to get that sign-on bonus. MyBookie.ag, code next round. Back to Saturday night. I didn't really have a rooting interest, but Florida Atlantic is a pretty good story. I like Dusty May. I was kind of pulling for them, Rece, and You know, I really thought every time San Diego State would make a run, they had an answer, and they never really wilted until you get right there at the end. I mean, that was just such a heartbreaking loss for them. You got to give San Diego State credit. Dutcher did not call the timeout. That was just an incredible game Saturday night.
It was, and I talked to Brian yesterday about that, as others have as well. And he has a great trust in this team, veteran group, and the players asked him during the previous timeout, "We get a stop. Do you want us to call timeout?" And he said no. And he didn't really have his best offensive team on the floor. And, he had 3 bigs on the floor to try to make sure they got the stop, which they did. And it was a great shot by Lamont Butler. It was one unlike any in Final Four history because it's the first win or lose true buzzer beater, meaning time expires buzzer beater in the history of the tournament. I mean, people sort of remember these great shots. Chris Jenkins was win or overtime. Lorenzo Charles was win or overtime. And there have been a few others too. This one was win or lose. And, so this buzzer beater unlike any other that they've had. But I thought the real turning point of the game and the thing that cost Florida Atlantic the opportunity to win that game, I don't remember exactly the time on the clock, but it was kind of around the 5-minute mark. Score was in the mid-60s, 2-point game. And San Diego State, I think, got 4 offensive rebounds, and not tip offensive rebounds, like balls that Florida Atlantic got a hand on, maybe even 2 hands on, but never could quite squeeze the rebound. Deflection, go off their hand, get loose. San Diego State got it, fresh 20 on the shot clock, do it again. They eventually tied the score. Those offensive rebounds on that series of possessions, and some during about a 3 or 4 minute stretch fairly late in the second half, when they got a large percentage of their offensive rebounds for the game, I really thought that was the thing that won the game for San Diego State, or gave them an opportunity to have Lamont Butler win the game at the end.
Rece, for me, the only way San Diego State wins this game if it plays in the 50s to low 60s. Do you think the Aztecs can dictate tempo tonight?
It's easier to do that than it will be. But UConn is not really a breakneck pace type team. They do like to get out and go, and they will. The thing about UConn is UConn can win in 50s and they can win in the 90s. And, so UConn can still win the game. But I would agree with you. If we get up in the 70s, which was extraordinarily difficult to do against San Diego State, but if you get in the 70s and 80s, then it's a distinct advantage to UConn. I don't think we'll get there tonight. But it is San Diego State's best chance. But look, anybody can have a bad shooting night, and San Diego State forces a lot of bad shooting nights. I'll be very surprised if UConn doesn't win the game, because I thought UConn and Alabama going into the tournament were the 2 best teams in the tournament. So I'll be surprised if they don't win it. But you're right. If they can slow it down, maybe find a way to frustrate UConn a little bit, that would be their best chance. But UConn just they've got more consistent offensive weapons than San Diego State does. And because of that, I expect them to win the game.
You should know it's like the movie It's a Wonderful Life, except in reverse. Every time you say Alabama was the best team going into the tournament, an angel loses its wings in my eyes. But you keep saying it's fine. I'm still not over it.
Jim, you know what I said? And I said this earlier. I picked, and look, my bracket is a disaster like everybody else's. So I'm not saying, this is particularly smart. I picked Alabama to beat UConn in the championship game. But after really just the first 2 rounds, even prior to the San Diego State game, I was thinking if I had that to do over, I would pick Connecticut. It's rare in this tournament that the best team wins the championship. But I think if UConn wins tonight, there's a really good chance that we all need to sit back. And I know maybe you argue the best team doesn't lose 6 out of 8 midseason. Okay, whatever. But I think you can probably say the best team, not just the team that won the tournament, the team that from November to March overall and April overall was the best team was Connecticut. And if they win the tournament, even if they don't, I think that's probably true. And if they win, we can say the best team actually won the tournament.
I think everybody knows this, but for those that don't, the Final Four every year, every coach, assistant coach, all the national media, they're all in one place. that cover and play men's basketball. I wonder, with the seismic movement in the women's Final Four this year, how much of a buzz was Dawn Staley's dynasty, what Caitlin Clark's done, Kim Mulkey, Angel Rece winning the national championship? Was there buzz around what the women were doing up the map in Texas?
It was, you know what? It was different this year. The games are always on, and there are pockets of interest, like when you go to dinner or whatever, and people pay attention. But it was different this year in terms of really wanting to see Caitlin Clark against South Carolina, and then the championship game yesterday, because, you know, LSU had taken exception to, you know, some of the defensive strategies and different things, and probably some of the attitude that Iowa had shown. So I felt it was, I thought there was a different level of attention, a raised level of attention toward the women's championship this year than we'd seen most years. It reminded me in some respects, and it was, I probably can't judge this quite as well, because I spent a few years when we first started broadcasting every game of the women's championship as the host of the women's tournament. And it was during the period of time when Diana Taurasi was playing at Connecticut for Gino Auriemma. And that era, and maybe I'm influenced by the fact that I was hosting the tournament, but I felt like there was a level of attention on Diana and UConn that elevated and sort of permeated those who traditionally and primarily covered the men's game. And I thought it was very similar this year for Caitlin Clark and for South Carolina being the juggernaut, and then, you know, LSU eventually winning the national championship, because, you know, I mean, that's a pretty talented 3 seed. I think that's what LSU was,
right,
a 3 seed when they won the championship. Our buddy Scott Woodward striking again, hiring a big name coach and winning a championship, right?
Yeah, it's only a matter of time before Brian Kelly does it. You get the feeling, right? Yeah.
We'll see. Yeah. We'll see. It's a pretty it's a tough row to hoe, as they say in Alabama, with winning a national championship. There's some fellas in Tuscaloosa and Athens that still might have a little bit to say about that.
So, Rece, I'm curious, since late August until now, your schedule has been pretty well tied up. Do you get a long vacation? Do you take a long 2-week vacation after the Final Four?
NFL draft, baby, just around the corner.
Right. Yeah.
NFL draft on ABC Thursday and Friday nights, where we kind of focus on the personality-driven side of the players being drafted for the ABC coverage, and then I do the rounds, whatever, 4 through 7 or whatever it is, on Saturday. The rest of the draft, I do that in its entirety. So after the draft, we'll take a little time.
Okay,
yeah, don't lie. I mean, look at that hair. He's a cyborg. He doesn't age. He's always there. When ESPN needs him, they pull him out of the closet. They wind up whatever's on the back there that he has hidden from the camera, and he rolls him out there, and he's a computer. They have to hit an update like all Apple products at some point.
If I'm Rece, I take a nap.
I'm not sure, but I think I was just insulted in a chuckling, friendly sort of way, but I'm not really sure.
That's what we call it. That's what we call a Dunaway.
He's good at that.
I'm horrible. My wife gives me a hard time all the time because she'll come back and I'm like, "Oh, your hair looks fantastic. I like this so much better." And she's like, "We've been married 24 years, so you didn't like my hair before this?" I never get it right. Rece. Thank you, man.
Bet.
All right, take care, Rece. Rece Davis.
Right,
bye-bye. Rece with us throughout the tournament. He's been joining us courtesy of MyBookie.ag, code next round. MyBookie.ag, code next round to get that sign-on bonus of up to $2,000. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere. MyBookie.ag, code next round. And you can get signed up there for the tournament tonight and for the rest of the season. Rece with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline.